How did
None of it's
this? How
good
did
for
this
me.
come about? The Run Rich Run.
So it started like many things in our business of being totally bored, waiting for something to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing Total Access in 2005 in the old RCA Dome. Terrell Davis was thinking about doing television at the time, so he was with us. Sort of the same way, towards the end of your career, you started, popping on NFL Network and cutting your teeth doing broadcasting.
2014, right? I did it with you as well.
Yeah, so before the end of your career,
Rookie year.
Listen, man. Bottom line is
in the prime of your career,
in the prime. So TD came on, and I remember sitting there, and we were barely trying to stay awake because we were 2 hours until Total Access was going live. And I'm suited and booted, and I don't know why, just out of a sheer boredom, I don't know why the thought popped in my head. I looked down at the field, I'm like, maybe I should run the 40-yard dash just to stay awake or whatever. And I'm like, how fast do you think I can run the 40? And he said, you? Like that. I'm like, yeah. He goes, when? And I'm like, now. He goes, like that? Because I'm dressed in a suit and tie and dress shoes. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you can't. And I said, fuck you. Sort of the same way that I said that to you earlier.
Yeah.
I literally cursed at him.
Did you?
This is good. I'm on a show like this when normally I'll just say I cursed at him and moved on.
You can say whatever you want on the show.
I'm actually able to say exactly what I said to one of the sweetest men and greatest men of all time and greatest players of all time. So he laughed, and I went down, and I had no idea. There's the first 40. I had no idea. You could see there's no one on the field. I had no idea they were recording this in the truck, and I had no idea someone was shooting it. None.
You had no clue.
No clue.
You didn't peek over
like
and
this.
see.
This camera was right, and that's kind of right there. I
see it
realized
with
it.
the little suit movement there.
You saw that, right?
Maybe I did just
and
blow
so
away.
Later on that night, they showed it on Total Access. Surprised me at the end and timed it out at 6.77 seconds. And what you're showing now on the screen was Matt Millen showing up the next day and asking to see it. He showed up the next day, and Holmgren showed up the next day. There's Terrell Davis. And they're like, did I see you run a 40 last night? And I'm like, yeah. So then they would show it, and they were laughing. I thought nothing of it. Show up the next year to the RCA Dome, and the first guy I see on the field is Holmgren, fresh off of the NFC Championship season of the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you're going to run it again. And I'm like, no. And he goes, you got to beat your time. And I'm like sitting here thinking to myself, he's not wrong. And so here it is, I guess the next year of me running it, and I broke it better, and it's not great.
Let off the gas a little bit those last couple of yards.
I know. And so I kept doing it again and again and again, and it started to get tired. The bit was tired. And then they created the Simoc-cam technology on NFL Network where you can overlay one 40-yard dash on another. And they came up with the idea of overlaying my 40-yard dash over real 40-yard dashes. And it's slapstick funny, man. Like where you would watch me get head starts and the fastest people run through me, or we're off at the same time, and RG3 would be off the screen by the time I'm at the 5-yard line. If you could call up Mount Cody, Terrence Cody, that one, that's the one, or BJ Raji, that's the one that kind of made it go viral, because you would watch me run a 40-yard dash, and you'd watch me get a head start, and then watch like Terrence Cody run through me, like the biggest guy. Like he would catch up to me and he'd run through me. And so that added like new life onto everything. And so when that happened, it would become like people YouTube famous, And so 10 years ago, some folks in the NFL network offices said, do you want to add a charitable component to it? I mean, like, look at that, like running through me. It's just loud, and I couldn't catch up to him. And then Dion would make fun of me. One time Dion ran as Leon Sandcastle, and backwards.
Yes,
he ran backwards, and the first 20 yards, he was stride for stride with me, running backwards with an afro on his head. So
Dion, greatest athlete of all time.
Oh, I don't know how him and Bo Jackson are like stride for stride, but it's the real thing, man. At any rate, so 10 years ago, they asked to add a charitable component to it. And I said, of course. And they gave me a list of NFL related charities to, be a good idea to, coordinate with the NFL in any way we could. And so my 3 kids, 5, 3, and 1 at the time, 2 boys and a little girl. And so St. Jude Children's Research Hospital jumped off the page at me. And I'm like, that's the one. Like, let's do that. Because there, but for the grace of God, go Susie and I'd go anywhere else, anybody else, to get that awful phone call. Like, I don't even want to imagine it, and how everybody who goes to St. Jude never sees a bill for anything. And so St. Jude was all on board. And so some kids from St. Jude would show up at the combine and, root me on a run. And then in 2020, when the pandemic, 2021, when the pandemic canceled the combine, because in 2020 we had it just before the world shut down. We did it in SoFi, and got some NFL legends to run with us as well, and some very generous folks, philanthropists, to run with them as well. Mark Laurie, who's one of the co-owners of the Timberwolves, or involved with the Timberwolves ownership right now, he got a bunch of people together. We raised a ton of money, and that kind of gave me an idea to just not do it at the combine anymore. Do it in Los Angeles, where you can have a stadium at your own disposal. You don't have to wait for everyone to run. Plus, running the 40-yard dash, when I would run it, I'd be sitting on my ass in the booth for 8 hours, eating like sandwiches and whatever. Not the best way.
Sandwiches.
Not the best way. And then I'd warm up for 5 minutes and run it. Not smart.
Yeah.
So we've done it at the Rose Bowl last 3 years, and I've done that for 10 years. We did our 20th. I did my 20th run this year, and it's getting bigger every year.
Annual event.
It's pretty
Annual
cool.
Run, Rich, run.
At the Rose Bowl too.
It's the highlight of the combine.
You know
After
what?
The fast guys run.
And now we run it. And Harbaugh showed up this year. You could see him there with Witt, Big Witt, and Todd Gurley.
Big Witt is maybe the best human being to ever play football. he's the best dude
I love him.
ever.
Him and Todd Gurley on their own spare time. And the thing with Harbaugh, this is a good story. So
get into it, man.
So
Talk to me.
So this being the 20th year of it and the 10th year for the charity raise, Susie, again, my wife, got in touch with the free world to ask them to do videos in support of the run. People from our world and our Rolodex and our friends and whatever. And she would say, how about this person? How about that person? I'd be like, she said, how about Belichick? And I'm like, really? I don't know if he'll do it. She's like, give me his number. And then like an hour later, she's just like, guess who I had the most lovely conversation with? I'm like, who? She says, Bill Belichick. I'm like, get out of here. Like that sort of shit would happen over and over and over again. So one day I get a call from Susie. She's like, guess who I just had the most, like it started the same way every time, with a little bit of an inflection of like, you couldn't do this, so I can do this,
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all good. That's why they call him the better half. So she's like, guess who I had the most incredible conversation with? I'm like, who? She goes, Jim Harbaugh. And I'm like, really? And she goes, and guess who might actually show up to the run? I'm like, really? And Jim heard about it, and he goes, I think we're going to be in town. So Susie and his wife got together, and we're talking about like getting them there. And so the day of the event, I'm like, is Jim going to show up? She goes, I don't know. Like, I think he might, but he's like TBD. So sure enough, like 20 minutes before we're about to go out on the field to do the run, I get a call from Susie saying, because she's bringing our kids, she's almost there. She goes, Jim's there. Send someone upstairs to go get him. And I'm like, really? And she goes, yeah. I'm like, so Jim shows up with his wife, his kids, his brother-in-law, like coming in hot.
With the cleats.
He came in and he had on, you could see his Charger hat and his Michigan Rose Bowl shirt, his gear. Because, as we all know, a few months before, he retired Nick Saban on that field, So to make the national championship, which Michigan eventually won.
All facts.
In case we need to run down information for those who may have missed it.
Right.
The asterisk national championship.
So I go up to him and I'm like, hey
97.
man, thanks for coming, but we've got a whole camera crew here. Do you mind if we incorporate you into the run? Where I'd like before I run, you come up and you give me the same treatment you give to JJ McCarthy, like slap me on my shoulders and, give me some punches. And he goes, absolutely, totally. So sure enough, we go out for the run. And before I do my run, all of the kids because again, we brought my kids, their friends. We had Play 60 kids, St. Jude kids. We told anybody who's on the crew, bring your kids. Rose Bowl's so cool. They're like, just go and run. So my guy from my show, Chris Brockman, brought his little 3-year-old son, and we're just like, run, just as many kids. That's him right there, Cage Brockman. And Stone Street would doing videos, and that's just some of the people that Susie got everyone on the screen there. Anyway, long story short is the kids are about to run, and the camera crew's ready, and all of a sudden I hear from the 40-yard dash start line, all the kids are lined up, Jim Harbaugh on the bullhorn. He took the bullhorn from the director and started announcing every kid by name. Ladies and gentlemen, 9-year-old Kathy, and she would run. Ladies and gentlemen, 11-year-old George, right? My buddy Chris Brockman's son kept running it again and again. He's 3 years old. His name's Cage Brockman. So like the fourth time you heard Jim go, he needs no introduction. It's Cage, like that. And for half an hour.
He was all about it.
And his brother-in-law said to me, this is Jim. That's him.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is him all the time. And so I didn't know it was coming. And then he did everything. He gave me the JJ McCarthy treatment. By the way, that hurt. Like I didn't.
It should.
Yeah, like he really like hit me in the chops a couple times, and awesome, just great. Showed up, showed out. Wit was amazing. They were all great, and we raised about $750,000 this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But Jim is the best, man.